Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our fall virtual cooking class. My name is Dakota Bogner, and I have the pleasure of working for the CSU Alumni Association, bringing events both virtual and in person to all of our wonderful alums nationwide, just like yourselves. I'd love to get to know each of you just a little bit better. So if you don't mind putting in the comments section your name, where you're watching from, and what year you graduated, we'd love to see just a little bit more about you. Wherever you're tuning in from, we're so glad that you're here. We would like to thank all of our CSU Alumni Association members that are on with us this evening. Membership is a critical part of what we do. We're very appreciative for each and every one of you. Your membership makes events like this and all of our other events possible. To learn more about membership and see all that the Alumni Association has to offer, you can use this QR code on the screen to download our mobile app. The CSU Alumni Association has many virtual, in-person, and hybrid events coming up, as well as many past virtual event recordings that are available to you. I'll include links in the comments here shortly to see our events calendar and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have any questions during the class, please go ahead and submit those in the comment section. We'll be keeping a close eye on them and we'll answer as we have time. The recording and the materials from today's class will be sent to you within the week. Those materials, including the recipes and all of the instructions, will also be linked in the comments shortly if you didn't receive those via email. Later on in the event, I will be putting a survey link in the chat. If you could also please take a moment to fill that out. We greatly appreciate your feedback and all of your wonderful ideas. And now I am going to turn it over to our wonderful instructors for the evening from the Kendall Reagan Nutrition Center. Nancy is going to start things off for us and introduce the team.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nancy. I'm the graduate teaching assistant at the KRNC, and I'm a second-year master's student here at CSU studying food science. So today, we're so glad to have you for our cooking class tonight. And like Dakota said, I'll be introducing some cooking class safety instructions and then the rest of the group. So the first thing I'd like to start with is to go over some knife safety instructions. Dakota, I don't know if you can just zoom in on me for just this one thing real quick. Thank you. Okay, so you want to hold your knife in the most stable position, and to do so, it's best to do so by holding the blade with your index finger and your thumb. And make sure if you're holding the vegetable or the fruit with the other hand, make sure that your knuckles are tucked in so that you don't accidentally cut the tip of your finger. So it's going to look something like that, where you're basically holding, where your other hand will be in the bear claw position. And always make sure that you're cutting away from your body. And then make sure that you wash your hands and have your hair tied back. Now I'm going to introduce, I'm going to give it up to Emma.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emma Kedin. I'm currently a fourth-year undergraduate student studying food science and human nutrition with a concentration in nutritional science. And I'm working with the Kendall Reagan Nutrition Center this semester, and I'm super excited to be here. I'm going to give it off to Jenny now.
Hi, I'm Jenny, and I am a first-year grad student in the Food Science and Human Nutrition Department. Heather?
Hi, I'm Heather. I'm a senior in the Nutrition Dietetics program at CSU.
Cool, thanks guys. Okay, we're gonna start with our first recipe, and I'm gonna give it off to Emma. So just really quick before we get started, the order of the recipe is gonna be as the following. The first recipe is gonna be the fall harvest salad, followed by the warm apple crumble, and then the penne with the braised squash and greens, and then the apple cider glazed chicken. So the first thing that's gonna be the fall harvest salad, like I said, and Emma will take us through that.
Okay, you guys. So we are going to start off by cooking the bacon for the salad. So over here, I have just 3 strips of bacon, and I have a little frying pan over here. And you're going to start on medium-high heat and just get these going. I just have a little bit of non-stick cooking spray in my pan. So get these going. Maybe don't drop it like I did. Okay. So that's just going to be the topping for our salad. And if you do not have bacon, you can omit it if you want, or you can buy like prepackaged crumbles or whatever you want to do. So yeah, so while that is getting cooking, we are going to start off by cutting our greens. So right here I have red leaf cabbage. So let me tilt you down here a little bit. So the best way to cut this is I'm going to start off by cutting this in half, actually, just to make it a little easier to get going. Going to do it twice. Split it in half. And then at the end here, as you guys can see, we have the little like end. So we're just going to cut that off and throw it away. And I'm going to cut it into quarters lengthwise. So just to make it a little easier to work with. And then also, you guys can use whatever lettuce you want. And you can also kind of cut it however you want. That's kind of like the perk of a salad. And now I'm just going to cut it perpendicularly here. And yeah, you can start to hear the bacon sizzling in the background. So I'm just going to toss this into this red bowl I have in the background. Okay. And then we're going to do that with the other piece as well. Some fun facts about lettuce is that it actually takes a long time to grow. I think on average it takes about 130 days from planting to actually like harvesting it, which I feel like, I don't know how long I think lettuce takes to grow, but didn't think it was that long. So that's kind of a fun fact. Also, on average, lettuce takes, or it grows to be 6 to 12 inches long. So yeah, I'm just going to quickly check on the bacon at the back here. Make sure it's going. So now we are going to start cutting up some kale. So I just have one bunch of kale here. And the easiest way to cut kale that I find is to kind of fold it in half. It kind of naturally does that. And we're going to cut along the stem so that we can get the leaf off of it. And kale is probably my favorite ingredient that we have in this recipe. It actually gets an enhanced flavor and texture in the winter time. So all our recipes today kind of have produce that is best in the fall and winter. So yeah. If you do not have kale, another thing that you could add are like spinach or collard greens. That's the perk of like a salad. You can add whatever you want to it. If you want to throw in some more fruits and vegetables, you can. But yeah, we're just gonna keep doing this. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to check on my bacon once more. And I turn my heat down to about medium. Okay. Next thing we are going to do are cut up some pears. So here I have 2 red Anjou pears. And you can use any type of pear. I decided to pick the red ones because it is fall. I figured that would be kind of fun for this recipe. Anjou pears are popular for their circular shape. So that's how you can kind of classify these compared to other types of pears. So I'm going to just cut these like an apple. And we're just going to cut these into thin slices just to top on the salad. If you want to dice them, you definitely can. Also, if you don't have pears, you could throw in some apples. Those are also a great fruit for the fall right now. So yeah. So just cutting those up. Another type of pear that is really common are the Bartletts. So these are actually really fun because they change colors when they're ripe. So you typically get them and they're light green in color, but they turn yellow when they are ripe. So if you never know when like your fruit is ripe or not, I feel like that would be a really good option for you. So yeah, that was something that I did not know, but that's probably my favorite little fun fact about pears. So yeah. And then another type of pear is the camise pears. Now these are like the types that you kind of get when you like order from Henry and David, like, you know, they're like the fancy ones that you get. They typically are kind of like uglier in appearance, but they're really known for their super sweet flavor. And like they pair really well with cheeses and like wines and stuff like that. So that would be a super good addition to this recipe because in our salad, we're going to add some cheese next, and our dressing is a little more kind of like tart and stuff. So that would be a really good addition to this recipe if you want to try that one out. So hopefully you guys are kind of looking around and seeing what kind of pears you bought for this. So yes. And it looks like our bacon's actually almost ready to flip again. So I'm going to check on that. Getting nice and crispy. I'm just going to finish cutting this up. And yeah, you can definitely cut these into smaller pieces because I know sometimes like the slices can kind of get a little big, but I kind of like having different like, you know, vegetables and fruits in my salad, just so like every bite's a little bit different. Okay, so we are done with all of this. So I'm just gonna move this out of the way. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the salad dressing. So over here, I just have a small little mixing bowl. So we are gonna start off by adding, where did my spatula go? Here it is. We're gonna start off by adding 1/2 cup of mayonnaise, or 1/4 cup of mayo, my bad. So I have that all pre-measured out here. Just add that to the mixing bowl. Then we have 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard. Throw that in. We have 3 tablespoons of grated Parmesan cheese. You can use whatever you want. You can get like fresh Parmesan cheese and grate it yourself. You can like just use like the I don't know, like the prepackaged Parmesan cheese as well if you want. So yeah, and then in here I have you can't, I don't think you can see it, but I have 1/8 of a teaspoon of black pepper and 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder. So I'm just gonna quickly mix this together. Just kind of start combining it a little bit. So I actually love this salad dressing because it is just, I don't know, I feel like it mixes really well with like the sweetness of the pears, and yeah, it just pairs really well. So then over here I have about 3 tablespoons of milk. So we're gonna add that in a little bit to kind of bring it all together, but I'm gonna check on the bacon first. It's almost done. Just a few more minutes on that. So as I said, I have 3 tablespoons of milk in here. I'm using 2%. You can use whatever kind you want. You can use 1%, skim, whole milk. And I'm just gonna add it a little bit at a time to make sure I get the right consistency. So I personally don't want it too thick just because I want it to be able to spread easily, but I also don't want it too runny either. So I would probably end up using about 2 to 3 tablespoons of it. So yeah, and you can also use, you know, almond milk, whatever you have around, just make sure it's like unsweetened, obviously. So this recipe is really nice because you can make it your own in a lot of different ways. And I feel like that's just like the nice part about any salad in general. So, okay. So I'm starting to get a consistency that I like here. I probably used about 2/3 of that, so a little over 2 tablespoons. Okay, I'm just gonna set that aside for now. Okay, so I'm going to remove the bacon from the pan here because it's all about done. Okay. And I just put it on a plate with some paper towels on it. Okay. So in here we have all of the fruits and vegetables that we cut up earlier. Then I have about 1/2 cup of Monterey Jack cheese. You can use whatever shredded cheese you want. I personally am the type of person where I will take any sort of cheese. I'm definitely not picky. So we're just gonna kind of start to toss this a little bit and just kind of combine our ingredients so far while we're waiting for the bacon to cool. Get that going. Okay. Then I'm just gonna get this cutting board out, and looks like our bacon is about done. Okay. Actually, it needs a little more time to cool. Just kidding. So for this, we're just gonna start cutting up our bacon. You can rip it apart too if you want. This is just gonna be our little garnish on top. So yeah. And as I said at the beginning, you definitely can like not add this if you're not like wanting to add bacon. The salad dressing is pretty salty already because we have that garlic powder in there. And then we do have all that cheese in there as well. So this is just like another flavor, also to add a little bit of protein. Okay. So we are just gonna add this on top, and I'm gonna get a spoon out so I can start adding our salad dressing. Add that on top. we're gonna mix it together. Start to toss it. And I just have this little plate right here. And it's time to serve it up. Get some apples in there, or some pears, my bad. And here you have your fall harvest salad. So now I'm gonna give it off to Heather so she can show you guys how to make your dessert, which is the apple crumble.
Here you go. Hi everyone, I'm Heather. We're making the apple crumble. First I'm going to show you how to prepare your apples. So we are actually going to peel them. I found it easiest to use a vegetable peeler, and what I found easiest to do is just to go around the bottom and the top, and then to peel it up from the bottom toward the top. Another way you can do this is to just take your knife and very carefully go around the apple in a spiral. I prefer the vegetable peeler because I don't lose as much flesh from the apple doing it that way. So we'll do that real quick. And also, really quick, if you haven't already, please preheat your oven to 350 so that it's ready to go when we're ready to bake our apple crumble. And then the way we're going to cut our apples is going to be very similar to, if not the same as to how Emma cut her pears. I will get my apple peel out of the way here. And then the same way Emma cut her pears, we're going to cut near the core and just cut off one side. So you should have a half round apple piece like that. And you're going to do that all the way around the apple. And then before I chop those up, I'm going to peel my other apple really quick. And the fun thing about this recipe is you can use different types of fruit to change up the flavor, and you can even use multiple kinds of fruit. So consider maybe using half of the fruit amount in strawberries or pears or peaches to make some interesting flavor combinations. And sorry, trying not to, just trying to pay attention to what I'm doing here. Another substitution instead of apples, you can try rhubarb. It has something of a sour flavor, but with the sweet recipe with the cinnamon in it, it would make a interesting flavor. Something to experiment with, it, whatever your preferences are. All right, core this apple real quick. And then, similar to how Emma cut up her pear halves, we're going to just slice it down the side. To get thin pieces like that. And then chop them into even-sized pieces. Kind of have to stack the apple halves to make it a little tricky. And then just drop the knife down so you get pieces about that size. We're going to do that with all the apple sides we have cut off here. Next, after we cut the apples, we're going to cut the butter for this recipe so that we can cut it into our pastry. And I will demo that when I'm done cutting apples. If you're looking for a substitute for butter, some options are coconut oil or mashed avocado. These replace the fat in the recipe and will still help provide a flaky crust. If you're using something that doesn't melt like butter though, be careful to mix it well, or else you may end up with big clumps of it in your pastry crust. That might not be to your liking. Alrighty, 2 apple halves left. Greek yogurt may also be used as a butter substitute if you want to add a little bit of protein to your crumble. Just be aware that whatever you substitute may change kind of how much water is in the recipe, and it may change the texture. So you may have to adjust your dry ingredients to compensate for that extra water. Alrighty. I am going to put these in a bowl real quick. So the apple will be used for our filling, which we'll be making first. And the butter will be used for the oat topping. So you take 2 tablespoons of cold butter. Slice it down the middle. Turn those 2 pieces over. So we go like this. Slice it this way. Rotate that 90 degrees. And then just chop straight down. Very, very carefully, because it's a very small piece of butter. Alright. I'm going to put that in the bowl for our oat topping. So next, we are going to combine half a cup of rolled oats with our butter and the other dry ingredients. And you'll want a food processor or a blender. You can use a hand mixer too. But we'll mix all this real quick. Make sure all the butter gets out of your bowl. We're just going to mix or pulse until the butter is pea size and mixed in with the dry ingredients. A little bit loud here. Put this in a bowl real quick and try and show it to you all. Make sure you don't lose the blade out of your blender or food processor like I did. So it might be hard to see from where I'm at, but there's about pea-sized butter pieces. So next we are going to take our apples and we're going to toss them with some sugar, lemon juice, flour, and cinnamon. So mix all those. I'm just going to mix them so where all the apple is evenly coated by your dry ingredients and lemon juice. So we'll be putting this into a 9 by 13 inch pan. If you haven't already, you'll want to lightly grease the pan so it doesn't stick. And we are going to, I'm going to put the apples in the bottom of our pan. Spread it out evenly. And next we're going to add the topping. And you want to make sure your topping is layered evenly across the apples. Which can be a little bit tricky because it wants to just come out in clumps. Take my spatula here and even out some of it. Alrighty. And then we're going to bake this in the oven for 45 minutes. You'll want to check it at 30 minutes to see if it's done. If it needs to cook a little bit longer, you'll cook it until, you can check it every 5 minutes or you can cook it until 45 minutes. And then I will hand it over to Jenny.
Okay, hi everyone. My recipe is penne with braised squash and greens. And my cameras are a little unreliable, so I might be switching between cameras so you can see everything I'm doing. But the first step would be to turn your pan that you're going to cook the squash in on kind of a low heat. And add your oil. So I'm going to use avocado oil. It's great because you can cook it at high temperatures and it has a high flash point and it won't degrade or become volatile when you cook it at high temperatures. So put some of that into the bottom of your pan and let it heat up. And then the first thing that I do when I'm cooking dinner and it has garlic is I chop the garlic first. And so here's my garlic, and I'll put that down. But what I wanted to share is that garlic is, it's a really powerful food because it has something in it called allicin. And that is, it's a botanical property that is antimicrobial, it's antifungal, and it's actually pretty potent. But when you have a raw clove like this, the allicin, there's actually two precursors to the allicin. One is called allinase and one is called alanine. And the allanine converts, the allinase converts the allanine to allinase. But it only does this when you smash it or cut it. And so it has to be smashed up like this in order for them to break out of their little cell walls and combine. And the interesting thing is that that little enzyme allinase, it's heat sensitive. And so if you chop your garlic and throw it right in your heat, it's going to destroy the enzyme and it won't be able to convert any of the allanine. So what I do is I get my garlic cloves and I have a little tiny food processor, let's see, like this. And I put it in there and I chop it up in there. And then I just let it rest in here for 10 minutes so it can start to do its magic. And then while my heat is getting up to temperature and I'm chopping other things, I just let the garlic rest. So the other thing that we're going to saute is our shallots. So shallots look like this, and they look like a giant kind of a pink garlic, but they're actually like a sister to onion. They're in the onion family. And so you can cut them just like you would an onion. They're kind of formed like a garlic. They have 2 to 4 bulbs inside. Mine looks like it has 2. But you want to take the outside skins off of it, those papery skins, and just peel it and chop it like you would an onion. And shallots are really, they're becoming, you used to not be able to find them in grocery stores, but they are more popular. They're more expensive than onions because they take longer to grow. You can't grow as many in a field. So they're kind of like an heirloom variety of onion. But they're actually much more potent than onions. So ounce for ounce, they have about 6 times the phytonutrients that an onion does. And so they're really healthy. There's a polyphenol called quercetin that's in onions, and it's also in shallots. And the shallots, ounce for ounce, have twice as much of that quercetin than an onion. So you have your chopped up shallots like this, and you can add it to your pan. Now my pan has not heated up, so if yours hasn't either, go ahead and just turn up the heat a little bit so that those onions and later your garlic can start cooking, because you want those nice and translucent. They take a little longer to cook than our greens and our squash, and we don't want to braise our onion and garlic. We want to saute it. So I hear it heating up. So let that heat up, stir it around in there. If you want to add red pepper at this point, you could do that. So, and red pepper, I'm talking about the little flakes like this that you would see at like a pizza store. This is too spicy for some people, but it does give the dish just more flavor. It's, you know, more elements, more interesting with it. Okay, so I'm going to let that keep going, and I'm going to move on to the squash part. So butternut squash is really abundant in the fall. A bunch of different kinds of squash are available. So you could use, you don't have to use butternut. You could use acorn or delicata. You could use Hubbard squash, or, you know, my favorite is kabocha squash. You can use any of those. I would not probably use spaghetti squash because it doesn't, it kind of is too stringy. I mean, some people would be okay with that, but this is nice to have a nice cubed consistency. So there's several convenient ways to buy squash now. You can buy a squash like this, have it up, scoop it out, chop it up, which is what I did. But you can also buy it in the fresh part of the grocery store in a little package like this. And it's all peeled, chopped up for you, and you can just measure it out and dump it in. So you need about 3 cups of the squash. And just to go back to this, if you did buy a raw squash, I find it easy to slice this. And then once you have your 1-inch slices, then I cube it up. And then when I have the cubes, I just take a paring knife and pare that skin off really easily. And so instead of trying to dig it out or peel it with a peeler, that's no good. So that's how you would do that. So squash is great for vitamin A, vitamin C. It's really great and high in fiber. And you can actually, if you were doing a cooked squash and mashing it up with butter, you can eat the skin. The skin is edible when it's cooked, and it just adds extra fiber. So we're always looking for extra fiber, and if you don't mind the texture, you could, you know, you could try that out. So I'm gonna add my garlic now to my pan. I don't know if you guys can see that. Okay. And stir it around and make sure nothing's burning. Okay, so when we braise something, so typically you'll hear about, you know, braising meat, and but we're braising veggies in this case, and it's different than stewing because you use less liquid. So if you were to stew your tomatoes or whatnot, you would add some water up, you know, in your pot and let it stew for a while. But braising is just, it's using steam from a little bit of liquid that you're going to put in the bottom of the pot. So take your squash that you have all chopped up and add it to your onions and garlic. And there's going to be, as it cooks, the water is going to come out of the squash and it's going to provide quite a bit of liquid. But the recipe does call for some vegetable broth, just 1.5 cups, and you can add that now. I don't have any vegetable broth, so I'm just going to use beef broth. And so if you have chicken stock or whatnot, it really doesn't matter. It will just be a little bit of liquid anyways. But I'm going to add about 1.5 cups, maybe a little less to begin with, of my broth to the pan. And then you want to cover it so that the steam gets trapped and cooks that squash. So at this point, I'm cooking for my family. There's 5 people in my family, and I do this a lot with recipes because sometimes it doesn't go. A lot of recipes are scaled for 4 people, and we have 5. So an easy trick to kind of extend a recipe in a healthy way is to buy riced veggies to add to it. And we like cauliflower. It's riced cauliflower. It's frozen. We buy it in a ton of, big quantities at Costco. And I add a bag of this to almost every meal I make because you can't really taste it. It's white. You can't see it. It kind of looks like ground beef. If you have a sauce or if it's, with ground beef, it has the same texture. So my kids don't even know. So you can add that to your squash mixture. So I have the heat at medium, like a little one above medium, so that it, you need some heat on it so that it starts to boil. And then, so now would be time to chop the chard. I bought 2 bunches of chard because I'm making it a little bit like a larger recipe, but I wanted to show you the difference. So at the store, they had some rainbow chard, which has this white color. It has red. There was some yellow in here, but I think I chopped that up already. So there's rainbow chard you could buy, and this is fairly small. It's like less than 12 inches, so it's kind of young. So when I chop this, I'm going to probably leave most of the stem in. I might take off the last bit, the last little chunk. So these ends I'm going to take off. They look like celery. You could save these, compost them, or if you make your own broth, this is great to just throw in, and I put a bag in the freezer for when I'm making broth. And so then I take this bunch and slice it this way, horizontally. And then I chop it this way, and it doesn't really, you don't have to be even about it because when it cooks down, it's not like you're trying to get it so that it fits on a fork, like in a salad or anything like that. It can be pretty much whatever shape. And so you can scoop this up. And then I bought another bunch of chard, and it was just labeled as regular chard, but it was so beautiful. It's not rainbow chard, it's all red, but I wanted you to see the kind of the red veins. And if you look really close, there's some nice red speckles. And chard is just packed full of phytonutrients, polyphenols. It's part of the beet family. So where it's different than beets is that you cannot eat its root. And this is a more mature bunch of chard than the last bunch I showed you. It has, it has a stem bunch like this. It almost looks like rhubarb. So, but that's not gonna, you could cook this up, but it's probably not gonna add a good flavor to the dish. So I just compost it. But yeah, so this is a much bigger leaf. So I would cut it horizontally. Now it always looks like, oh my gosh, this is so much greens. Like, who's gonna eat all this? But you may already know this, but when you cook it down, it will look like you have added nothing to your pot. So don't be afraid at the, getting a really nice big bunch of greens, because if you're braising them, it's going to cook down to, it's not going to be a problem. It's not going to seem like an overwhelming amount. Okay, and like I said, I mean, I still have, you know, there's some big pieces in here like this. You can tear those apart, but really those are gonna cook down into smaller pieces too. So, so I didn't know this. This seems pretty cool. So in 1 cup of cooked chard, because after you cook it, some of the nutrient content changes. But 1 cup, you get over 50% of your daily vitamin C. So that's really, really nice. Okay, so my squash, it's boiling on the bottom. I'm going to stir it up so nothing sticks to the bottom. And I would probably, at this point, I would add some salt and pepper. It's, you know, it's kind of up to you how much, you know, you probably know how much salt and pepper is usual for your liking. So add that to the squash. And then go ahead and take your big bowl of greens and dump it right into the pot on the stove. Okay, so that needs to braise for a while, and that squash really needs to cook down so it's not like a, you know, gross potato, you know, hard potatoes, you know how gross that is. So cook it down for about 20 minutes. And during that 20 minutes, you'll want to start your pasta water, because we're going to cook our pasta and add it to the dish. So go ahead and turn your pasta water onto boil. And I'm going to hand it over to Nancy for while that's going, so we don't have to, you know.
Thank you. I mute me real quick. I don't know if I'm still muted, but I'm not muted. Okay, hey everyone. Alrighty, so now we're going to move over to the apple cider glazed chicken recipe. And the first thing we want to do is that we want to heat our skillet. So I'm going to turn it up to medium heat. Sort of medium low. And then I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And then while that heats, I'm going to make sure I spread it all over the skillet. And then while that heats, we're going to cut the chicken. So over here I have 2 chicken breasts. What we want to do is that we want to make them 4 slices, or 4 chicken breasts at the end of this. So we're going to cut through it horizontally. So what I like to do is just place my hand on the top and then go in with my knife just at the midpoint or halfway through that chicken breast, and then just cut all the way through it. So I have 2 slices over here. And then I'm going to do the same with the other chicken breast. And you want to make sure it's not too thick in one and then too thin in the other one, so that both of them can cook evenly in the given time. So just make sure that you, as evenly as you can, cut them halfway of that chicken breast. All right. And there are the other 2. So we have 4. So I'm going to crank up the heat a little bit more over here. And you can use a non-stick skillet or a just one that, you know, not necessarily non-stick, but just make sure if you use it that it's the one that sticks. Just put more olive oil or butter, whatever fat there, so that the chicken doesn't stick to the bottom. I'm going to turn it up a little bit so it heats faster. And then the next step that we have here is seasoning. So in this little bowl here, I have all the seasonings for the recipe. So I got 1 teaspoon dried rosemary. I got ½ teaspoon onion powder. I got ½ teaspoon garlic powder. And then I got ½ teaspoon paprika. And then I got the ½ teaspoon salt. And then the black pepper is up to taste. I like black pepper in my dish, so I added a teaspoon of that. But it's totally up to you what kind of spices you want to add or you want to season your chicken. So feel free to use the suggested ones in the recipe or even add more to it. Just whatever flavor you like to have in the chicken, feel free to use whatever seasonings you'd like. So I'm just going to give them a quick mix over here. So this is what they look like. I don't know if you can see that, but I have the rosemary here. It looks pretty good. It smells pretty good too. And then I'm just going to take a bunch between my fingers and just sprinkle it on top of the chicken. I'm going to do that with all 4 pieces. And I'm just going to rub it in a little just to make sure it's evenly spread on all the parts of the chicken. I'm going to take a little bit more here. And then I'm going to flip that so I season the other side as well. Just in the same manner, sprinkling some on the top, and then I'm going to go in and rub it afterwards. Then I'm just going to make sure to use all my seasoning because I already had my fingers dipped in after I touched my chicken. So it's not going to be, you know, food safety applicable to use this seasoning for anything else other than chicken. And then I'm just going to rub it in. Okay, it looks pretty good here. Everything's seasoned. So I'm just going to go wash my hands really quick. My oil's still heating up, so I'm going to wash my hands really quick, and then the next thing we'll do is we're going to put the chicken in the skillet. And then with any other meat or chicken product that you've touched, you just want to make sure that you thoroughly wash your hand before you touch any other surface or touch anything, because you would be spreading bacteria or spreading contamination from that chicken to everything else that you touch. Okay. So I have my hands all nice and clean. And my oil is pretty hot too. So I'm going to use my tongs here. And then I'm just going to go in and place all 4 slices of chicken into the pan. You can hear it nice and hot. It's sizzling. That's how hot we want it to be. Make sure to not overcrowd your pan or skillet. So over here, my skillet can take the 4 pieces. But if your skillet doesn't take all 4 pieces, just do different batches so that you don't, overcrowd it and some of them will not cook evenly. So I'm just going to turn the heat slightly down. Just make it medium low. I had it on medium high. And then we're going to let it cook for 6 minutes per side. And then in the meantime, I'm going to ask Jenny if she has any announcements she wants to make about the pasta or the chard or her dish in general. So Dakota, maybe if you want to put Jenny live.
Okay, so my pasta is still boiling, or my water is still boiling. The squash is braising nicely. So yeah, during this point, it's just watching your water boil.
I can take over. Okay, cool. Okay, I'm so glad that me and Jenny can be together on the same screen. All right, so I have some, fun facts about cooking chicken. So this is one way that you can cook your chicken. This way is known as sauteing your chicken, which is basically using a little amount of oil or a little amount of butter or whatever fat you choose to cook your chicken. And then you're basically cooking it in a shallow pan or skillet for a few minutes per side, and that's how it cooks. This is one of the easiest ways to prepare your chicken, but then you can also poach your chicken, you can grill your chicken, you can bake your chicken, and you can slow cook your chicken. I personally like baking chicken because to me it's the most reliable way. Because with the sauteing, I'm always like worried that the bottom of the chicken would burn or that the chicken wouldn't fully cook, but hopefully we're not going to encounter that today. But just saying in general, I usually go for the baking method. And that's because all you have to do is just, season the chicken, put it in that pan, and then throw it in the oven for 20, 25 minutes or however long it will take to cook the chicken, depending on the thickness of the chicken. And then it's good to go. So this is also an easy way, in addition to the sauteing, that you can use to prepare chicken in the future. And Jenny, feel free to chime in whenever you have any announcements to make. And until then, I'm just going to keep talking. Perfect. So we're about at 3 minutes now of the chicken cooking.
So I'll just show, oh, sorry, Nancy. I was just going to show a picture of kind of what my squash and greens is looking like. So my first layer cooked down, and I added another second layer of greens, and they're going to cook down now.
Awesome. All right. Thank you for showing that. It actually looks pretty good. It looks very colorful too, so that was good to see. So let's see. So another tip, or I guess instructions or tricks you can use when you're sauteing your chicken is that you use a pan that is a good size for the amount of the chicken that you have. If you use a too big of a skillet or a pan, your chicken is going to dry out basically because the juices that are secreted from the chicken when it's cooking, it's going to dry out because of the bigger size of the skillet. So that's one thing you just want to make sure you don't use something big when you're cooking such a small amount of chicken. And then if you're using something too small for the amount of chicken that you have, the juices that will come out will cause the chicken to, kind of be braised or steaming rather than getting sauteed. So these are things to keep in mind when you're cooking your chicken, just considering the size of the chicken and the size of the skillet that you'll be using. Okay.
And I just added the pasta. So most pasta will take about 10 minutes. So just set your timer.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. And I hope those guys who are cooking along with us are cooking in pairs. And if not, they are able to stay on track and be able to do all the recipes in the steps that we're doing and staying on the same pace that we are. And, if the pace is too fast for you, I know it's a little bit late in the class, to make this announcement, but feel free to type in the chat and let Dakota know that the pace is too fast, and we can always slow down a little as well. So I think the timer for the apple crumble just went off, and I think the timer was for 30 minutes. So Heather here is just rotating it, checking for doneness. And I think the decision is to go for 15 more minutes or, at least 5 more minutes. And then we'll check for doneness again. So like Heather said, the apple crumble usually takes about 45 minutes to cook. Some people see that it's done at 30 minutes, depending on how, fast your oven is or how fast your oven cooks stuff. So if you check at 30 minutes, see that it's done, good for you. If not, please make sure that you only consume it when it's fully cooked, which again, we suggest is 45 minutes. So I'm gonna flip my chicken. Looks nice and brown. If you can see that. But here's how it's looking. Oops. Okay, great. I hope you saw that. And then since I flipped it, I'm gonna let it cook for 6 more minutes on that one side or that other side. And in the meantime, I'm gonna start mincing the garlic. So just food safety wise, since we have just used this board to cut the chicken, and we know that the fluids that come out of the chicken might be contaminated with some bacteria. We just want to make sure that we don't use that same board to cook something to chop something else unless we have cleaned it. And the same goes for the knife as well. So I'm just going to get a brand new board and knife to start chopping my garlic or mincing my garlic. And the reason for that is because when the garlic is going to start cooking, it's not going to cook for the same amount of time that the chicken has been cooking. So there's this, discrepancy, I guess, between the cooking time of the garlic and the chicken. So I'm not quite sure that, if the garlic gets mixed with whatever bacteria was on the board, it would be sufficient to kill it or make it safe for consumption. All right, great. So I'm going to show you a nice trick that I like to use for mincing my garlic. And to do this trick safely, just make sure that your knife blade is as wide as possible. So I think this blade for me here is wide. It fits my, the back of my palm if my palm hits it. And that's basically why I asked for it to be wide, is because you're going to be using your palm to put pressure on it so that you actually squeeze or crush your garlic. So here's what I'm going to do. So my garlic here has the skin on it, or has that outer layer on it. And, this is an easier way, and that's why I use it, than basically peeling it, a little by little. This one is faster and easier. So what you want to do is that you want to place the thickest part of your blade on the garlic. And again, if your knife is not as sharp, I will, demonstrate a different method of, mincing your garlic. So please just make sure your blade is as big as possible so you don't cut yourself. So again, I'm just gonna basically hit it. And this is the product here. I just have a crushed garlic. So I'm going to be removing the skin, or whatever that layer is called. And it comes off pretty easily because we've already crushed it. So it's already, scattered all over. You just gotta gather it and throw it away. And then now what you want to do, you have it all nice and crushed, just chop it. And there you have your minced garlic. You can go for another round of chopping if you want to make it smaller. Just up to you what you want, how thick you want your garlic to be. And then the other method that I just talked about is basically to press your garlic against the hard surface, not from this side, not from the side that, I don't know what this is called, but not the side that has this thing on it, but the other side. So I guess the end of the garlic, just press it against the hard surface. And it should also easily become, peeled, because that skin just comes off once you press it against that hard surface. So here it is. So the recipe here calls for 4 cloves of garlic. So I already chopped 2 or minced 2. And I have 2 left. So I'm going to do it in my favorite way. I think it's the easiest way. There's a tiny piece here. I have to remove that too. Alrighty. Last garlic clove here. Oops. And there we go. All right, and then I'm just gonna, group them together. And then I'm gonna mince it one more time. I don't really like to, chew on the garlic when I'm eating my dish. So I'm just making sure it's as tiny as possible. And again, that's just your personal preference, however small you like your garlic to be. Okay, I'm gonna check on my chicken real quick. Smells so good. So I'm just gonna flip it again one more time, and then I'm gonna get a thermometer to check the doneness of the chicken. I'm just gonna put it on a plate real quick. I'm gonna get the thickest part, or the thickest chicken piece that I have, and then I'm gonna remove it from heat. And then I'm just gonna check how hot it is at the thickest part as well. So mine is not quite at 165 yet. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put it back, and then I'm gonna cook it for a few more minutes. Okay, I'm gonna put that away. And then in the meantime, Jenny, how is the pasta looking?
It's doing great. My pasta is going to be done in like 2 minutes. And then I'll show you guys how to grate up some Parmesan cheese and put it all together.
Awesome. And I have to say, it smells really good in the kitchen right now because of the rosemary and all the different spices that we've used to season the chicken. So that's awesome for my nose, and hopefully yours too if you're cooking along. So for today's recipe, if you can't tell from the from the title, we're going to be using apple cider. And make sure that it's apple cider that you've purchased and not apple cider vinegar, because there is a difference, and I have the information here for you. So the main difference between the two is that the apple cider vinegar, it has been fermented into an alcohol, and then it has been converted into acetic acid, whereas just the apple cider is more similar to apple juice. But there's a difference between the apple cider and the apple juice. Let me just flip this real quick. So the difference between the two, let me turn on the fan too. There's a lot of smoke coming out. So like I was saying, there's a difference between the apple juice and the apple cider. The apple juice is, let's see. So apple juice is made by crushing the apples to get the juice from it, or to extract the juice from it. And then the flesh and the skin are not usually in the juice. You don't drink apple juice with the flesh and the skin of the apple. But on the other hand, the cider, much of the pulp and even the skin is left in the juice. And then that turns it into a deep caramel color, and also adds a lot of richness to the product. Apple juice is filtered to create a liquid that is thin and smooth as water. So this is the difference between the cider and the juice. And then also, the apple cider can be called sweet cider or just cider, just like I referred to it a second ago, or it can also be referred to as non-alcoholic cider, just depending where you live and what people call it in the area. And like I said, you just collect the juice from the skin or the flesh of the apple and mix it with them as well. Let's see. And then some of you might actually be wondering, then what's the difference between apple cider vinegar and just, vinegar? And vinegar is going to be a fermented combination of water and acetic acid. But the acetic acid in the vinegar only could be made from a variety of plants, including potatoes, rice, grains, or fruits. But the apple cider vinegar, it's been fermented from basically fermenting apples. It's been, produced from fermenting apples, and then natural sugars were produced, sugar alcohols were produced, and those sugar alcohols were converted by the addition of some bacteria, were converted into the acetic acid. So basically the difference is that the apple cider vinegar is coming from the apple. Okay, I'm gonna check for doneness really quick over here. I'm just gonna split it in half. Again, at the thickest part. Because if this part is cooked, then pretty much everything else is cooked. So I would give it a couple more minutes. It's just looking slightly pink. And then over to you, Jenny, if you have any updates or any announcements.
Yeah, so my pasta is done, and I drained it, and it's in here. I usually like to add some butter into my pasta. It keeps it from sticking together. It gives it a little more flavor. And so I'm just stirring it around in my colander. And then while that's melting into the pasta, I'm going to show you how to grate some Parmesan cheese. So I bought the Parmesan cheese that comes in a block like this. So some of the like canned Parmesan cheese has a lot of really kind of fillers in it, like potato starch. There have even been reports of like wood pulp. So sometimes you want to just go straight for the good stuff so you know what's going into your food. And I just have a regular cheese grater, and on one side it has these, they're kind of like little star-shaped holes, and that is for Parmesan cheese. And so when you grate it, you can just, here, grate it into a bowl, just like you would regular cheese. And it comes out, it looks exactly like the stuff you would find at a pizza parlor in those little glass shakers. The only thing I would say is it does take a while. So, you know, depending on how much cheese you want, you might be at this for a little bit. But I would say about a quarter of my block has given, you know, a few tablespoons. So now we can combine everything, and hopefully you guys all turned your squash down to low because it didn't need to be on high past those 20 minutes. And it looks like this, all nice and steamed down. The squash is starting to fall apart a little bit. So it's time to eat before it gets too mushy. So I'm just gonna pour my pasta in and then toss it around in there. So at this point, there shouldn't really be any, it shouldn't be soupy, it shouldn't be like a soup. It should be just a nice side dish that you could put on the side of a plate with your chicken. So it would look like that. And then you can toss some Parmesan cheese on the top. And you have your nice penne with braised squash and greens.
That looks really delicious, Jenny. Thank you so much. Awesome. So my chicken has been cooked. Now I'm going to go in with my garlic, and then I'm just going to add slightly a little bit of olive oil because my pan here is really dry and it's really smoky. So just like about a teaspoon of olive oil will do. And then again, I'm going to go in with my garlic. Gonna cook the garlic, or basically until it's fragrant, about 20 seconds, just, you know, so it gets a little bit of color. We don't want it to be really brown, but still sort of, you know, have that nice tan color, I guess. And also a little bit fragrant. So I'm going to turn my heat down to low because my pan is, or my stove is really hot. I don't want it to be that hot. And then I'm going to go in with my cider, with my apple cider. Just grabbed it out of the fridge. So again, like I said, let's just turn this down low. Okay. And then, okay, we have 1 cup. Sorry if you haven't heard me over that beeping, but it's 1 cup of apple cider. And then I also have 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard. Go in with that. And then I'm just going to stir this. I'm going to turn it up one more time to about medium-low. And then I'm going to stir this in or mix them all together. Again, here we have 1 cup of apple cider. It smells really good. And I have 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard, and I have the 4 cloves of minced garlic. And then we're going to let this cook for about 8 minutes. So right now it's about 6:52, but I added this about 6:51. So we'll let it cook until 6:57. Hopefully I did the math right. Is it right? Is it 8 minutes? Maybe 6:58 then. I don't know. There's a reason I'm studying science, guys. So like you see here, if you're cooking along, you'll smell the apple cider and you'll smell that, mix of fragrances with the garlic, with the Dijon mustard. It's very rich. It smells amazing. I can't wait for the chicken to be in here cooking with that. It'll be amazing. So Heather, do you have any announcements about the apple crumble?
Well, it's cooked for 45 minutes, and it is ready to plate. And if you would like, it would be good topped with some whipped cream.
Yep.
Or paired with whatever, any other, ice cream, dairy,
Yeah.
other toppings, all good stuff.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I would like to see, what the final dish looks like. So whenever you have that ready, feel free to show it to the participants. But yeah, like Heather said, whipped cream or coconut cream, all these would, serve as delicious toppings for the warm apple crumble. Again, I still have my heat at about medium. I'm going to pump it up to medium-low. Excuse me, medium-high. Just the point here is that we're trying to make this cook down so there's not much of a fluid or liquid. It's more of like a concentrate by the end of the 8-minute period. So I'm just going to, turn the heat a little bit up so it, I guess, I don't know the word, like condenses faster. And I'm just stirring it because I don't want my garlic to, stick to the bottom, because eventually once the liquid condenses, the garlic might stick to the bottom. So this would be a dish. Are you ready? Yeah. Great. Oh, you're good. Please come in.
So it is a crumble. So it does look about like that when it's finished.
Yeah, it looks really good. And, you know, the topping could also make it, yeah, a little bit more moist, I guess. Yeah, but like I was saying, so the different cooking techniques for the chicken breast is grilling or baking or sauteing, just like we did today. And those are basically like the quickest ways to cook your chicken, and I guess the most efficient. Um, so yeah, if you're meal prepping for the week and you want to make chicken, you want to make something quick because you already have so many other things you want to meal prep, any of these methods will do. And if you know you're coming back and you just, you know, from work or a long day and you want to make something real quick, I usually make just chicken. And like I said, I usually go for the baking because I don't spend so much time, you know, watching over my chicken. But if you prefer it to be sauteed, that's also a great option, just like we did today. It was, you know, quick, efficient, and I think it just took longer than, you know, the 6 minutes because I did have my heat a little bit lower than what I should have. So that's why I think also when I cut the chicken, they were a little bit thick. So definitely the thickness of the chicken will dictate how long it takes to cook. So that's something to also keep in mind all the time. If your chicken slices were thinner, or at least thinner than mine, they might have, you know, cooked within 5 or even 4 minutes. But mine were, you know, fairly thick, especially one of them was really big. And that's the one that I, you know, stuck the thermometer in and usually took the longest. Or I assume it took the longest to cook. So my sauce here is actually condensing, and I see that it's becoming a little bit thicker. So that's great. That means that this is working and we're getting to where we need to be. About 1 more minute. And then the final thing we want to do is that we're going to put the chicken back in here, and then we're going to let it cook for about 2 minutes per side, so 4 minutes total. And again, the purpose of this step is to let the chicken soak all the flavor from the sauce that we just prepared. So I'm afraid for the time, you know, purposes of the class, ends in 2 minutes exactly. So I don't want to keep anybody over time. But like I said, this is the final step of the dish, and I'm going to stay here for 2 more minutes until it finally ends. But by the time that it ends, we're going to be only able to cook one side of the chicken, and then we're going to need to flip that for 2 more minutes. So after the class ends at 7, just, you know, flip it for 2 more minutes. Or if you don't think that it needs the 2 extra minutes to, you know, soak all that flavor and all that sauce, then your chicken is good to go because it's already fully cooked. It's already good for consumption, safe to eat. So it's really up to you. I'm already going to go ahead and flip mine, although it hasn't been 2 minutes, just because I think that my sauce is already thick enough that the chicken has been soaking it really quick. It smells really, really good. We have about 1 more minute here, and this should actually be ready as well. So we should be all finished. Just gonna add the sprig of thyme. Ooh, okay. I'm almost out of sauce here, so that's amazing. Again, my skillet is really hot too, so I guess that's helping with everything to be soaked. So I'm gonna go ahead and serve my chicken. It looks really nice with that, you know, glaze from the apple cider and the Dijon mustard, and it's really nice and soft too. It's like almost flaking or breaking apart super easy. So I'm gonna show you the final look of this dish, and then I'm gonna let you all go. So here's what I have. It's nice and brown and soft and hot. So that concludes all the recipes for tonight. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. It was really fun cooking with you, although we can't see you. But yeah, it was great having you.
Thank you so much to Nancy and Heather and Jenny and Emma. We appreciate you and the Kendall Reagan Nutrition Center so much. Thanks to all of you who joined us this evening. There is a survey linked in the chat if you wouldn't mind filling that out quickly. And a couple of you did ask in the comments if the recording would be sent out to you. And yes, absolutely, you will get that in an email from us in just a few days. Thanks again for being here, and we'll see you next time.